Well, today finds me in Columbia County, New York, which is about 30 miles southeast of Albany and over 100 miles northeast of New York City, along the waterway called the Agawamuck Creek, which is Native American for a stream with many fish. And what you see on the right here is what's called the Summit Reservoir, which diverted water or held water for the factories of the town of Philmont, New York. And like many other waterways in upstate New York, the falling water of Agawamuck Creek was put to use at many factories. Most of those factories are closed now. As a matter of fact, all of them are. And the feeder canal, which is just to my left here, below the factory to my left, there's a brick building there. It says Cotton Mill on the other side on an old painted sign. Just below that, there's a diversion canal that supplied water to many factories as Agawamuck Creek lost 250 feet in elevation in this area. Well, the demise of the factories meant the water was returned to the original course of Agawamuck Creek, and the original course has a natural waterfall called High Falls, which is quite spectacular from what I've read. I have never seen this falls before. As you can see, there's plenty of water coming over the breachway here of Summit Lake, so I would expect the view of High Falls to be quite spectacular today. There is a park at the base of the falls where you have to hike back a distance, less than a mile, to see the falls. We'll be heading there next and exploring the high falls of Agawamuck Creek. And as you enter the High Falls Conservation Area, which is operated by the Columbia Land Conservancy, there's a short little loop trail called the Hemlock Trail, which showed up on that map we just recorded. Good place if you got kids. You want to do some skipping, rock skipping. These are all flat pieces of rock here. The geology of this area lends itself to good skipping stones. If we can get a better look at the bedrock of this gorge here, we'll see that it's mostly what's called phyllite, P-H-Y-L-I-T-T-E, I believe, which is a metamorphic rock that's derived from shale. And the minerals tend to line up and lay in flat plates together. The mica and the other minerals in here lay down flat. And it cleaves easy into great skipping stones. And the early fall colors here are starting to come alive. We got a nice little view looking upstream into the sun, so this is kind of pretty the way the water reflects that perfect fall day. And after leaving the Hemlock Trail, you can take what's called Waterfall Way, which takes the high route above Agawamuck Creek. It gives you a pretty nice view of High Falls through the trees. And you can really appreciate the height of these falls because the trees are here for scale. Most of the information I have says the whole height of the falls is 150 feet. And we're going to go down to the bottom and look up at it. But from the bottom you can see about 2/3 of the falls here. And then the rest is out of view unless you're up here. But that Summit Lake we saw earlier diverted water into a canal. It's barely visible in the center of your screen. It looks like a concrete road. And most of that water was sent down to factories for many, many years. And now it's not. Most of it comes directly down High Falls here but there is a part of the canal that's still intact to the left here that you can't see, and that canal has been breached, and the rest of the water that doesn't go over High Falls comes down what's called Agawamuck Falls. We're going to head down the hill and go take a look at that next. And after coming down those wooden steps there, those were made of local materials. Looks like they used the trees that were standing here to make those nice steps. You come down along what's called Agawamuck Creek, right to the creek. And we'll see when we get to the High Falls themselves that there is a small dam at the top of the falls. So the dam we saw earlier was called the Summit Lake Dam. That helped keep the water levels consistent throughout the dry season so they could keep the factories running. Just below that, out of view of that spot, there's a second dam that diverted water through a feeder canal that actually fed all the factories. This is the water from the feeder canal that had to find a new way back to Agawamuck Creek once the feeder canal was no longer being used. So this is called Agawamuck Falls. And it comes crashing down this mountainside in a gorge that looks pretty new because it is. And you really can't see the whole thing this time of year because of the trees that still have leaves. But it is an interesting little waterfall. But the main attraction is just up the stream bed itself. We'll go take a look at that in just a minute. And just a few hundred feet upstream from the unnatural Agawamuck Falls, got a little scrambling over some of these boulders of phyllite that have tumbled down into the valley here. And they are a little slippery when wet, and with the spray from these falls, they're always wet. So take your time and wear your older shoes with good traction. And you're treated to a spectacular view of the High Falls themselves. This is just as spectacular as a much more famous waterfall just east of here called Bashbish Falls. It's been open to the public for generations. Well, this park's only been open since 2014, but was quite crowded, at least when I got here about 1 o'clock in the afternoon for a weekday. With perfect weather like this, that's no surprise. I've got the plunge pool in the bottom of the falls to myself now, about 1:30. And I can tell you at 1:30, the sun is just right for videos and photographs of this falls. And this fall sunlight on a day this clear makes for great videos and great photos. It's gentle enough, it doesn't overexpose your subject, but bright enough that it makes it real pretty. So this is 1:30 in the afternoon on Eastern Daylight Time. If we were on standard time and had a day this clear, we'd have to come an hour earlier to get the same angles of the sun. So any earlier, I think the cliff on the right would be casting shadow over the falls, and probably several hours later for the cliff on the left to cast shadow. So I'd say 1:30, 2 o'clock is a great time to come visit this. And of course, on a day with overcast, you don't have the shadow issues. But what a spectacular park. This was kind of a stretch the legs out for me on the way up to the Adirondacks to do 3 or 4 days of hiking. And I'll be recording some of the mountains up there. The weather looks great this week with blue skies, no rain in the forecast. And we'll be adding those to this channel as the weeks go on.